Now a small panel. As before, you're welcome to raise your hand, and we have a microphone running around. Pernilla there, just see that she sees you. Okay, take some water first. I need some as well. You're good. Okay. So, thank you for excellent presentations. I was thinking this sustainability being not doing that bad, but regenerative is something else. Like the restorative is the middle, and that's where you do good by yourself. But I think you both, all three of you, are great examples of the regenerative part when you spread to others. You teach others. Teaching or spreading the Unbox Carbon project, for instance, or the research. So we saw here, you all showed some examples of the hindrance and the problems, but I think we dig into that a little bit more. So except for the financial, we know that. It's cost more in the beginning, like same with the large-scale wooden construction 10 years ago in Sweden was really expensive. But it continued on, and now it's almost the same as the concrete buildings. And we have this risk evasion. It's a new material thing. Do you have any other experiences? What's the hindrance? Why don't we use this stuff? It's any suggestion?
Well, what you're saying, I mean, there I think it's also important to take the whole life cycle into consideration, because there we have also seen examples actually where with buildings that were perhaps a bit more expensive to erect, with bio-based and biogenic insulation materials from a developer that also had used conventional material, mineral insulation material. In both buildings they had a water damage, and the one with the biogenic material, they just screwed up for the heat. Of course that takes energy, which is a burden, but at the same time they didn't have to open up the construction as they had with the building with mineral wool. So on a maintenance level, they felt, or they had numbers that it was a lot more advantageous and than the conventional buildings. So it helped. Actually, it had a lot better usage and economy in the actual phase after the building was delivered, even though the economy was a bit worse before. But then in the life cycle, then it became a lot better. So I think it's very important to take the whole life cycle into account, and also maintenance and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually that one of the greatest challenges is to shift people's minds, and particularly designers who have been in practice for many years have a very hard time understanding limitations, planetary limitations, and shifting their approach to the projects that they're doing. And I think it's almost this expectation that we should be able to make a one-to-one exchange. So we should just be able to take all of our concrete and replace it all with CLT, and then we'll be fine. And I think that we're missing. We have to convince people who have been in practice for a very long time that what they're doing needs to be fundamentally reassessed, and that's been very hard to do. One of the phrases I hear again and again is, well, it's just, when can we scale this up? And everyone's really eager to scale it up and build more. And I think we need to address our economic system in order to come to the bottom of that particular question. And that is perhaps more than the head designers in our office are interested in doing. You know, they are working for the clients who are saying, well, we need to develop this because we can make a lot of money on it. And there's so many things embedded in the way we work. It's huge to change that. That's why.
Yeah. We're going to see some examples of the scaling up this evening.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Great examples.
Yes. If I may add a small thing, apart from like all the barriers that we listed, like the economical barrier, the cultural barrier, the standardization, and like policy barriers, and even resource barriers, all these kind of things, I think one main barrier to add is the person we see in the mirror every morning when we get up. It's us. It's our courage and our kind of getting outside our comfort zone and try. And don't look at it as no, it's just like a happy thing, and it's just a wave, and then it will disappear, or it's just trendy, and then one prototype here and there, and that's it. As any normal thing that comes quickly and then fade quickly. So I think we need to have the stamina to continue and see those kind of pilot projects as a start, not as just something that will pop up and will go on its own again. And we need really to work hand in hand to cross these barriers and see it as something in our back, and we need to clear the way for the future afterwards.
One good thing about these materials, for instance, that we know they work. We've been in an open air museum. I worked in an open air museum. Yeah, it's nothing. It's not a faux material that's just invented that we don't know anything about. We actually know a lot. We have the faucet. We have the yeah. Any questions for this? There's one.
So it's Sten again. So Johannes, I really enjoyed your examples from historic buildings. We work a lot with historic buildings at my architecture firm. And I would actually argue that the old buildings pre-functionalism are the real functional buildings in many ways. And my experience with working with buildings after the functionalism is that they are maybe less so. And I think that's something we need to bear in mind, what we communicate with, how they look, and what they actually do, because that can be very different things. For example, using wood on the outside of buildings, which needs to be replaced in a very short while. We see that a lot with the wood constructions today, and it's just, yeah, I don't know, not functional. Would you like to say anything about that?
Yeah, no, that's right, and I think that is also why for us it was also kind of an eye opener to include maintenance into this whole concept of constructional protection, and that is also where we learned from the past, like also with sacrificial materials or sacrificial parts. So even if you make a wood facade that you use edges to keep the water away, that you do it in a way that protects the materials. With common sense. And what we also found looking at we call the modernist buildings from modernist era, is that often they were also built with materials that required or were so-called maintenance free, but then were also very impossible to maintain. So that's also what a lot of these things we suggest or propose is exactly to make that easier. So yeah, I was also curious if Henning Larsen had a focus on the geometries of the building in relation to biogenic materials, because the examples you show, they are still very Henning Larsen. And perhaps there could be Henning Larsen architecture with a nice overhang, or I don't know if that's a discussion inside the office.
Yes, it definitely is, and I think that we come back to this one-to-one translation of what we've always been doing. Now we'll just switch out a few materials and then have a lower impact. A lot of that is dictated not just by designers at Henning Larsen, but also by the zoning plans and building codes and regulations, and also the developers' ambition in terms of what the project has to turn around. So there are a lot of different parameters influencing that. But I think that one of the aspects that is crucial is that we understand materials better and understand that it is how these materials function and therefore where they should or should not be used. So just, again, raising the level of knowledge about what are the inherent properties of materials and how do they work also with each other and with the climate is critical knowledge right now.
And I can recommend, there's a doctoral student now at University of Gothenburg looking into wooden facades, what we can learn from the historic houses, if you can say. So it's the Department of Conservation. So that's used to be a colleague of mine. It's coming, but it's 3 more years or something. So it's, yeah, of course. Because you can build, you know that you can build with wood in the facade. You can just look out the window. And, yeah. More questions? One here?
Yes,
Heidi? Yeah.
yes, I have a question. My name is Naib. I've worked quite a bit with bio-based materials, insulation materials. And one of the barriers that we have is that the expected thermal performance as to the assessment methods we have kind of underestimates bio-based materials and gives the projects the understanding that we need to have thicker walls, for example. What's your perspective on that as a designer when you work with your developers, for example? Maybe they fear losing rentable space and losing the overall economy and profitability in their project. And we know that bio-based materials perform very well in the life cases afterwards.
I would say that that is maybe not the greatest challenge that we face when considering the insulation, that it's very often a question of moisture, fire, other challenges for bio-based building materials. It reminds me of a moment when I stood in front of a facade that was going up. This was 20 years ago, and wasn't discussion of bio-based versus mineral-based materials, insulation in particular. But I was standing with some American colleagues, architects, and they looked at it and they said, "No way!" And I think we were looking at about 400 millimeters, maybe 350 in the total buildup. And they said that would never happen in the States because look at all that square footage that you would lose. And so any argument I came with in terms of energy and reduced cost and operations, it was just like you could never convince any client to ever do this. So I feel like where we are right now with fairly stringent energy requirements with a mineral-based, and okay, you have to go up maybe a little bit with another solution, you are not really tipping the scale. That happened in 1965 in Denmark when the energy code started like cinching down the energy or tightening up the energy performance. So I don't think it's a huge challenge. There are lots of other ones that are worse.
More questions? There's one.
Hi, my name is Joanna, and I was wondering if, for example, the discussion today would not be necessarily about how we can do this and how we can achieve this, and all the impediments that we might face today, like from a financial point of view, from a client perspective point of view, political or any other issues that we might have. If we overcome all of these issues that we have today, what will be the future discussion? What will our challenges be and our wishes for the future? If everyone is on board and already implementing this on different scale, on different local projects and so on, so if everyone is already using this kind of approaches, what will be the discussion afterwards and the issues and the challenges we might face? Thank you.
I'm going to answer in one word. Water. I think that we have huge climate change challenges in front of us that we can't necessarily address directly in the building industry.
And also if we put these materials into our constructions, we need the people to actually put them there. The craftspersons, especially if you want to go into like a transformation project, then the people going in have to understand the structure, existing structure, and the materials there, and how the new materials adapt with these materials. So suddenly I think the competence space for the craftspersons have to grow, and then you have to learn more as well. You can't be the mounting products guy. You have to be the understanding the system of the house. So I think in Denmark you have had a project, I think, where the crafts teaching for the gymnasium have had like a month or so extra with traditional building crafts.
Yeah.
Isn't it so? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we can say something about that.
I can say very little.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
something
very little about
more
that.
than me.
So no, I'm not sure I do actually. But I think I can go another way and talk about that. At the architecture school in Copenhagen, we also have a new education which is called the Architecture and Technology, which is directed actually to building constructors, so craftspeople, the people that actually sit in project buildings and make all the tender documents. So it's not the architects that have the big concepts, but they actually sit. And there's a big focus on also historical buildings as part of learning and dealing also especially with biogenic and bio-based materials. So in that sense, I can see that there's this reflection of the past which is being used in education. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the concrete and steel industry have had, as we mentioned before, earlier speaker mentioned that during the war was a lot of money pushed into that system and a lot of research, and that and all the factories were already built for the war industry, and suddenly they have that infrastructure for free, you can say. So it's and then we worked with that for 70 years, and now we have to, like the new starters, have to compete with their really lean processes of the conventional materials. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, if I may add also an answer to this question, I don't think we will reach that very soon, because hopefully all these barriers will be like resolved year after year. But if we manage to reach that nice dream, I think, or I hope, our biggest concern will be how to get rid of all these concrete buildings that we have from before, and how to reduce their impact after demolishing them, or like how to maybe extend their lifetime and be able to use them in order to compensate all these emissions and abuse of resources that they have that we did with our hands before we shifted back to use the natural and bio-based material.
Okay, one last question over there.
Hey.
Hey.
My name is Nicholas. Thank you for the presentations. I'm a bit curious how we can address, or how it is addressed, that these materials, they don't just pop out of the sky. There is working conditions and ways of like producing them. There is value chains, and how do we make sure that in this type of transformation of the building industry, that this is not just like a greenwashing and the materials will be problematic to produce in the future? How do we already build this in, and how do you like the labor basically and the extractivism, how do we work with that in already now, when the scaling up should be happening in the future? I don't know, just some thoughts that you might have.
I can start at least, or I can try. It's an important question, and I think we also forgot that we might end up overusing the natural resources again by overusing all this natural material that we have, especially clay. And earth is not renewable. It is in one sense, but it takes centuries and centuries in order to bring it back as a layer, as a natural material again. But the others are renewable and quickly. Like bamboo or reeds, it's very quick to have them again, and easier to use them compared to others. So being conscious about the amount of material we use, and also how we produce them, and how we also keep reusing them again. Because the way we produce them is extremely important. If we keep adding all these stabilizers and additives, it will not be possible to reuse them again easier, or at least separate the ingredients and the components to return them back to nature in a unharmful way. So that would be actually my fear, that we will reach a level of sophistication to be able to comply with our standards for like thermal performance and like buildings that are waterproof and fireproof and all these kind of things, and then we produce composites that are extremely hard to reuse them again.
Like Martha said, on your project there, you had to have quite a lot of reused materials as well. You can't just do it in natural materials. You have to reuse as well. And there, clay is an excellent product for that because it's reversible, traversable. You can take it down without damaging the surface behind or substructure.
Just a brief comment. I think that we really have to stop building new.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you stop using materials or stop using resources. It's just perhaps the focus shifts. We shouldn't have the demand for the structural materials, but for the interior and insulation and fit out and finish. Yeah, ideally, if we manage to, if we're that lucky.
Okay. Thank you. That was the last question. So now it's a break. Thank you to speakers first. Excellent.